Human endured 10 lashes meant for the alien girl. The next day, her brothers knelt before him. The human ship entered orbit without ceremony. It did not shine or roar. It simply arrived and waited, as humans often did. Below it, the alien world of Kareth turned slowly, wrapped in copper clouds and rigid laws older than memory. Evan Cole stood at the viewing pane with his hands behind his back. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was a human cultural envoy, chosen because he listened more than he spoke. The mission was simple on paper: open dialogue, observe customs, avoid offense, build trust. Kareth was not known for kindness. The Karethian people valued order above all things. Their cities were carved from dark stone, their streets clean and silent. Every citizen walked with purpose. Every rule was enforced without exception. Evan had been warned many times during the journey. Do not interfere. Do not challenge their justice system. Do not show weakness. What the briefings did not prepare him for was the sound. It echoed through the open court like a crack of thunder followed by breathless silence. Evan turned his head sharply. He had been guided through the upper walkways of the capital, watching and learning, when the sound reached him again. A sharp snap, then a cry cut short. He looked at his escort, a tall Karethian official with silver skin and black eyes. "What is that?" The official did not slow his pace. "Justice." Evan stopped walking. Below them was a wide stone plaza shaped like a circle. Hundreds of Karethians stood around its edge. In the center, a slender alien girl was bound to a curved post. She was small by Karethian standards, young. Her skin was pale blue, her limbs thin. Her eyes were wide with fear. A masked enforcer raised a long, flexible lash. Evan felt his stomach tighten. What crime did she commit? The official hesitated for the first time. She failed in duty. That's it, Evan asked. She failed. She was assigned to guard a transport gate. It was damaged during her watch. Was anyone hurt? No. Was it sabotage? No. Evan watched the enforcer pull back the lash again. Then why? The sentence is 10 lashes, the official said flatly. It was decided this morning. The lash struck again. The girl cried out this time. She tried to stay upright, but her knees shook. Evan felt heat rise in his chest. She's a child. She is of working age. She'll be scarred. Yes, Evan's voice lowered. She could die. The official turned to face him fully now. Human Evan Cole, you were warned. Karethian law is absolute. Evan looked back at the girl. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Her hands clenched against the bindings. She did not scream again. She bit her lip until dark blood ran down her chin. Something in Evan broke quietly. How many lashes has she taken? He asked. 4. How many remain? 6. Evan stepped forward. The official's hand shot out, blocking him. Do not interfere. There must be another option, Evan said. A fine, labor, anything. There is one alternative, the official replied. Evan met his gaze. Then say it. The official studied him for a long moment, as if weighing whether the truth mattered. Another may take the punishment in her place. Evan blinked. Anyone? Only if they invoke substitution before the 6th strike. Evan's eyes went back to the enforcer, who was already raising the lash again. Wait, Evan said loudly. The word echoed across the plaza. The enforcer paused. The crowd murmured. Heads turned upward toward the human standing on the walkway. This is highly improper, the official hissed. Evan did not look at him. How do I invoke it? The official's voice dropped. You must declare responsibility for the crime. I do, Evan said immediately. You do not understand, the official said. The punishment transfers fully: pain, injury, risk of death. I understand. You are not Karethian. I'm human, Evan replied, and I'm declaring responsibility. Silence spread through the plaza like a held breath. The enforcer looked to the judges seated above the circle. They conferred briefly, their expressions unreadable. Then one of them stood. The law allows substitution, the judge announced. If the human accepts the sentence, the accused will be released. The girl lifted her head. Her eyes searched the crowd until they found Evan. Confusion crossed her face, then panic. No, she tried to say, but the word came out weak. Evan leaned forward over the railing. It's okay, he said gently, though she could barely hear him. You'll be okay. The official grabbed his arm. This will damage relations. Evan pulled free. So will letting her die. The judges spoke again. Bring the human forward. Evan descended the steps slowly. Every eye followed him. He felt very small as he crossed the stone floor. When he reached the center, the enforcer removed the girl from the post. She collapsed to the ground, sobbing. Evan knelt beside her for a moment. "Breathe," he whispered. "You're free." Her fingers clutched his sleeve, shaking. "Why?" she asked in broken trade language. Evan smiled faintly. "Because someone should." The enforcer pulled him to his feet. The post was cold against his chest. His hands were bound above his head. The crowd leaned in. 6 lashes remain, the judge said. "Begin." The first strike hit Evan's back like fire. His body jerked, breath forced from his lungs. Pain exploded outward, sharp and deep. He did not scream. The second strike came faster. The third followed before he could steady himself. His vision blurred. He focused on breathing. In, out, stay upright. Murmurs spread through the crowd. This was not how it usually went. By the fifth lash, blood soaked through his shirt. His knees trembled, but he locked them. Falling would shame the substitution. Falling would send the girl back. The sixth strike landed. It felt like his back split open. "Enough," the judge said. The enforcer stepped away. Evan sagged against the bindings, chest heaving. The ropes were cut. He collapsed to the stone floor. The official rushed forward. "Get him medical aid." Evan shook his head weakly. "Her first," he said. The girl was already being helped away, still looking back at him with wide eyes. As Evan was lifted onto a transport stretcher, he heard whispers ripple through the plaza, words like endurance, choice, madness. He closed his eyes, pain roaring through him, unaware that this single act had just begun to change how an entire world would see humanity. Evan Cole woke to the sound of slow, steady beeping. At first, he thought he was still dreaming, trapped somewhere between pain and memory. His back burned with a deep, heavy ache, like fire buried under stone. Every breath pulled against it. The ceiling above him was smooth and metallic, not human design. Pale light glowed from thin lines in the walls. He tried to move his head and failed. A quiet groan escaped his throat. "He is awake!" The voice was calm, unfamiliar. Evan blinked. His vision cleared enough to see shapes around him. Medical instruments hovered on thin mechanical arms. Several tall figures stood nearby, their silver skin catching the light. "Carethian Medbay," Evan whispered, recognizing the place from briefings. "Yes," the voice said. "You are alive." This outcome was uncertain. Evan tried to smile, but stopped when pain flared. "Figures." A Carethian healer stepped closer. Her black eyes studied a floating display filled with symbols. "Your skin is weak. Your muscles are damaged. Your pain tolerance is unusual." Evan closed his eyes again. "That's one way to say it." The healer tilted her head slightly. "Most species scream, many lose consciousness, some die from shock before the punishment ends." "I've screamed before," Evan said quietly, "just not today." There was a pause. Evan sensed the attention in the room shift toward him. "You refused immediate treatment," the healer said. "You demanded the girl be released first." Evan nodded slowly. "Was she?" "Yes, her record is cleared." Evan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Good." The healer studied him longer this time. "Your kind is confusing." "I hear that a lot." Word spread quickly through the capital. By the time the sun set behind Kareth's copper clouds, the story had already changed shape a dozen times. Some said the human had been ignorant of the pain. Others claimed humans were immune to suffering. A few whispered that it was a calculated insult meant to shame Carethian justice. None of them were fully right. Evan remained in the medbay through the night. His injuries were treated with careful precision, but healing was slow. Carethian medicine was advanced, yet even it could not erase what had been done. His back was wrapped in layers of soft, adaptive fabric that responded to movement and heat. He slept in fragments, waking often to sharp memories of the lash, the sound it made, the way the crowd had gone silent. In one of those waking moments, he noticed someone sitting beside his bed, the alien girl. She looked smaller now out of the public square. Her posture was careful, as if afraid to take up space. Fresh bandages wrapped her wrists where the bindings had been. When she saw his eyes open, she froze. "You should be resting," she said softly. "So should you," Evan replied. She hesitated, then nodded. "They said I could see you. I did not believe them." Evan shifted slightly, then stopped. "What's your name?" She seemed surprised by the question. "Lyra." "Nice to meet you, Lyra," Evan said. "I'm Evan." "I know," she said quickly. "Everyone knows." She looked down at her hands. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Why did you do it?" she asked at last. Evan considered the question. There were many answers he could give: diplomacy, morality, human values. None of them felt right. "Because I was there," he said. "That is not an answer," Lyra said. "It's the only one I've got." Her eyes filled with something bright and painful. "My brothers will return tomorrow." Evan frowned. From where? The border wars, she said. They are commanders. That sounds important. They are powerful, Lyra said. Respected, feared. Evan watched her carefully. Are you worried? Yes, she said immediately. They will think you insulted our family. They will think you made us look weak. I didn't mean to. I know, she interrupted. That is what makes it worse. She stood suddenly. You should be careful. Before Evan could respond, she bowed deeply, then hurried out. The next morning, the city changed. Kareth's streets were still orderly, still quiet, but something uneasy moved beneath the surface. Guards stood in greater numbers. Officials whispered in tight clusters. The public information feeds replayed footage from the plaza again and again. The image of the human standing silent under the lash spread beyond the capital, beyond the planet, into nearby systems. The High Council convened an emergency session. Evan was summoned despite his condition. He was brought in on a hovering medical platform, unable to walk without assistance. The council chamber was vast, carved directly into the mountain stone. Rows of judges sat in elevated tiers, their expressions unreadable. You have disrupted our balance, one of them said. Evan rested his head back against the support frame. I didn't plan to. You interfered with our justice. I followed your law, Evan replied. Substitution is allowed. The judges exchanged looks. That law is rarely invoked, another said, and never by an outsider. Maybe that's why it exists, Evan said. A murmur rippled through the chamber. You are aware of the consequences, the first judge said. Your action has drawn attention from powerful families. Lyra's brothers, Evan guessed. Yes, Evan met their gaze. If they want to speak to me, they can. You do not understand Carethian honor, a judge said. They may demand blood. Evan shrugged carefully. I'm already bleeding. The council fell silent. Later that day, 3 warships entered orbit. They were not sleek like human vessels. They were heavy, armored, marked with scars of battle. The city went into formal alert. Civilian movement was restricted. Armed honor guards lined the landing platforms. Evan watched from a medbay window as the ships descended. They are here, the healer said quietly. Evan nodded. I figured they would be. Do you regret your choice? She asked. Evan did not answer right away. He thought of the plaza, the girl bound to the post. The way the crowd had expected her to break. No, he said finally, not even a little. The brothers arrived in full war armor. Their presence was overwhelming. Each stood taller than the guards around them, their movements precise and controlled. Their eyes were dark with fury held on a tight leash. They did not go to their family home. They went straight to the High Council. Demands were made. Voices were raised. The word human echoed through the chamber like an accusation. Evan was brought in again, this time under guard. The brothers turned as he entered. Their gazes locked onto him with the weight of judgment forged in war. This is the one of them said. Evan met their stare without flinching, though his body screamed at the effort. The tallest brother stepped forward. You took punishment meant for our blood. Yes, Evan said, you shamed our house. That wasn't my goal. You acted without permission. She didn't have a choice, Evan replied. I did. The chamber went silent. The brother studied him slowly, eyes narrowing. Humans are said to be weak. Evan said nothing. They say you avoid pain, that you hide behind machines. Evan breathed through the ache in his back. Some of us do. The brother stepped closer. Then why are you still standing? Evan looked up at him, because standing was the right thing to do. For the first time, doubt flickered across the warrior's face. Outside the chamber, the city waited, holding its breath, unaware that the story of humanity on Kareth was no longer about diplomacy, but about something far more dangerous. Choice. The chamber felt colder than before. Evan lay back against the medical platform, its soft field keeping him upright, but only just. Every breath pulled at his injuries. The adaptive wraps along his back tightened and loosened as he shifted, trying to ease the strain. They could dull pain, but they could not erase it. The 3 brothers stood in a line before him. They were similar in form, but different in presence. One carried the stillness of long command. Another held tension, like a blade half drawn. The third watched quietly, eyes sharp, missing nothing. Lyra stood behind them, small and pale, her hands clasped tight in front of her. She did not look at Evan. She looked at the floor. You speak boldly for someone who broke under our law, the second brother said. Evan lifted his head slightly. I didn't break it. You bent it, the brother snapped. I followed it, Evan replied, exactly as written. The High Council watched in silence. This was no longer their debate to control. The tallest brother stepped forward again. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "I am Rathar, this is my brother Kale, and this is Voss." Evan nodded once. "Evan, no titles?" Kale asked with a sharp edge. "No," Evan said. "I don't think they'd help." Rathar studied him. "You took 6 lashes, yes. Medical scans say 3 would have ended you." "That sounds right." Voss finally spoke. His voice was quieter than the others. "You could have stopped. The law would have returned the sentence to her." Evan looked toward Lyra then. She was shaking. "I know," he said. "Then why didn't you?" Kale demanded. Evan was silent for a long moment. The chamber waited. "Because stopping halfway still makes it her burden," he said. "Pain shared isn't pain removed." The words moved through the room like a slow wave. Rathar turned slightly, glancing back at his sister. "Lyra," she flinched but lifted her head. "Did he speak to you?" Rathar asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "Did he threaten you?" "No." "Did he demand loyalty?" "No." "Did he ask for anything in return?" Lyra shook her head. "He asked my name." The brothers exchanged looks. "That is all?" Kale asked sharply. "Yes," Lyra said, "that is all." Silence returned, heavier than before. Voss stepped forward now, circling Evan slowly. "Our laws are built on endurance. Those who cannot endure are taught to fear failure." He stopped in front of Evan. "You endured without belonging, without obligation." Evan met his gaze. "Belonging doesn't decide what's right," Kale scoffed, spoken like someone who does not live with consequence. Evan's lips pressed together. "I live with scars, same as you." Rathar raised a hand, stopping Kale before he could respond. He looked down at Evan again. "You understand what you did appears dangerous to us." "Yes, you challenge our belief that strength comes from punishment." "I think strength comes from choice," Evan said. "Punishment just proves who holds power." Murmurs broke out among the council members. Rathar's eyes narrowed slightly. "You accuse us." "I don't mean to," Evan replied, "but I won't lie." Kale's hand moved to the edge of his armor. "Careful, human." Evan did not look away. "I'm already past careful." The guards tensed. Voss raised his voice just enough to cut through the tension. "Brother, look at him." Kale hesitated, then did. Evan's hands trembled where they rested at his sides. His skin was pale with strain. The field beneath him flickered briefly as his body shifted too much. "He should not be alive," Voss said. Rathar nodded slowly. "Yet he is." "And he refused advanced healing until Lyra was cleared," Voss continued. "The healers confirmed this." Kale frowned. "That is foolishness." "Or principle," Voss said. Rathar turned to the High Council. "Was the record truly cleared?" "It was," a judge replied. "The human insisted." Rathar exhaled through his nose. "You put our sister before yourself." Evan nodded once. "That was the deal." "There was no deal," Kale snapped. Evan shrugged carefully. "Then it was just a choice." Rathar stepped back, folding his arms. "You shame us by making us question ourselves." "That wasn't my aim," Evan said, "but if it happens, maybe that's not shame." The word hung in the air. The council chamber doors opened slightly as a messenger entered and knelt. He whispered to one of the judges, who stiffened. "What is it?" Rathar asked. "The footage," the judge said. "It has spread beyond Kareth. Other worlds are watching." Kale's eyes widened. "Already?" "Yes." Rathar's jaw tightened. "Then this is no longer private." Evan looked confused. "Footage, the punishment," Voss said. "Your endurance, it has been recorded from multiple angles." Evan closed his eyes briefly. "I didn't consent to that." "Kareth does not ask," Kale said. Voss tilted his head. "But humans do." Evan opened his eyes again. "Yes, we do." Another silence followed. Rathar turned to his sister. "Lyra, come forward." She hesitated, then stepped to stand beside her brothers. "Tell us the truth," Rathar said. "Did you sabotage the gate?" "No," she said. "It was already failing. I reported it, but the system delayed the alert." "Did you abandon your post?" "No." Kale's hands curled into fists. "Then why were you charged?" "Because the gate failed on her watch," a judge said carefully. "Responsibility was assigned." Rathar looked back at Evan. "You took punishment for a crime she did not commit." "Yes," Evan said. "That is not substitution," Kale said. "That is injustice." The word seemed to surprise him as soon as it left his mouth. Rathar stared at his brother, then slowly nodded. Voss looked toward the judges. "Why was no investigation done?" The judges shifted uneasily. "The system prioritizes order." "At the cost of truth?" Voss asked. The chamber grew tense. Evan watched all of this with heavy eyes. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He simply breathed slow and shallow, letting the pain remind him he was still present. Rithar turned back to Evan. If we had not arrived today, what would you have done next? Evan thought for a moment. Rest, heal, then go home. No demands? Kale asked. No threats. No speeches? Evan shook his head. I'm not here to change your world. Voss's gaze sharpened. Yet you already have. The brothers stepped aside and spoke to one another in their own language. Their voices were low, urgent. Lyra stood between them, listening, her shoulders tight. The council waited. Finally, Rithar turned back. Human Evan, he said, by our custom, a life saved creates a bond. Evan nodded slowly. I've heard of that. Such a bond is not given lightly, Rithar continued. Nor repaid easily. I didn't ask for one, Evan said. That does not erase it, Kale replied. Voss stepped forward. We will investigate the charge against our sister, Evan blinked. It was already cleared. Formally, Voss said, not truthfully. Kale looked toward the judges. If the system failed, it will be exposed. The judges stiffened. Rithar met Evan's eyes one last time. You endured pain meant to teach fear. Evan waited. You taught something else instead, Rithar said. The brothers turned and began to leave. As they passed Evan, Kale paused. He looked down at him, expression unreadable. You should have broken, he said quietly. Evan looked back, exhausted but steady. Maybe that's where you're wrong about us. Kale said nothing more and followed his brothers out. The chamber doors closed. Only then did Evan allow his head to fall back fully. His breath shook. The med platform hummed, adjusting its field to keep him conscious. The healer rushed forward. You pushed too far. Evan managed a weak smile. Story of my life. Far above the city, the warships remained in orbit, unmoving. And across Kareth, whispers grew louder. Not about punishment, but about a species that chose pain so others would not have to bear it. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the brothers leaving the council chamber, the transport gate records were sealed. Data streams that were usually locked behind layers of authority were opened by direct command. Inspectors arrived at the gate where Lyra had been stationed. They did not wear the symbols of punishment. They wore the marks of inquiry. Evan did not see any of it. He drifted in and out of sleep in the medbay, his body finally reaching the edge of what it could endure. The pain no longer came in sharp waves. It settled deep, heavy, constant. Every movement felt like dragging broken glass under his skin. Still, he remained conscious more often than the healers expected. You should rest, the healer said for the third time that hour. Evan's eyes opened slowly. I am resting. You are listening, she replied. He smiled faintly. Occupational hazard. Outside the medbay, the city of Kareth felt different. People still walked in straight lines. Guards still stood at attention. But now, when citizens passed large display panels, they slowed. They watched. The footage played again and again, the human at the post, the lash rising, the silence. What unsettled them was not the punishment. They had seen punishment all their lives. What unsettled them was the choice. Karethians did not choose pain. Pain was assigned. In the upper districts, families argued quietly behind closed doors. In training halls, young recruits whispered questions they had never asked before. In the data forums, debates flared and were shut down, then reopened under new names. The brothers watched all of it. They stood inside the command chamber of their flagship, the city spread below them like a carved map. Lyra stood near the doorway, silent. The gate failure was confirmed, Voss said. Structural decay, the alert delay was a system fault. Kale's jaw tightened. Then the charge never should have been filed. No, Rithar said, it should not have. Kale struck the table with a closed fist. They would have scarred her for order. They almost killed a human, Kale snapped back. Rithar looked at him sharply. And what does that say about us? Kale fell silent. Lyra finally spoke. He never blamed anyone. All three brothers turned to her. He could have accused the court, she continued. He could have shamed the judges. He did nothing. Voss nodded slowly. That may be the most dangerous part. Kale frowned. Dangerous? Yes, Voss said, because he forced no one. He left us to face ourselves. Rithar straightened. Prepare a public assembly. Kale's eyes widened. That has not been done in generations. It will be, Rithar said. Today, the announcement spread through the city like shock through stone. All citizens were ordered to gather in the central plaza. The same plaza. Evan was awake when the healer received the message. They are calling an assembly, she said carefully. Evan frowned. About what? About you, he sighed. That figures. You cannot attend, she added quickly. Your condition, I'm attending, Evan said. You can barely stand. I don't need to stand long. The healer studied him, then looked away. Humans are unreasonable. Evan smiled weakly. We've been told. By the time they reached the plaza, it was already full. Thousands of Carethians stood in perfect order, filling the circular space. The post still stood at the center, dark marks visible on the stone where blood had fallen days before. Evan was brought in on the medical platform, escorted by guards who no longer looked at him with indifference. Some looked uncertain. A few looked respectful. The brothers arrived moments later. They did not wear war armor. They wore formal black, the color reserved for truth declarations and life debts. The sight alone sent a ripple through the crowd. Lyra walked behind them. Rithar stepped forward, his voice amplified across the plaza without shouting. People of Kareth, he said, we are gathered where law was carried out. A murmur passed through the crowd. We are also gathered where law failed. Silence fell. Rithar gestured and a large projection flared to life above the plaza. Data scrolled past, clear and undeniable. Time stamps, structural scans, system logs. The charge against our sister was false, Rithar said, not by intent but by neglect. The judges seated above the plaza stiffened. Our system valued speed over truth, Voss continued, and punishment over understanding. Kale stepped forward, his voice tight but steady. A human took lashes meant for our blood. The crowd shifted uneasily. He was not bound by our honor, Kale said. He was not commanded, he chose. Rithar turned slightly, looking toward Evan. Human Evan Cole, he said, do you deny this? Evan swallowed and shook his head. No, Rithar faced the crowd again. Then hear this, he raised his hand. The human is not weak. The words struck like a physical force. He endured pain without hatred. He accepted suffering without demand. He asked for nothing in return. The plaza was utterly silent now. Voss spoke next. In our culture, strength is proven by what we can survive. Kale finished the thought. In his, strength is proven by what they will endure for others. Rithar stepped down from the platform. He walked across the stone toward Evan. Gasps rippled outward. This was not protocol. This was not expected. Rithar stopped directly in front of the medical platform. He looked down at the human, taking in the pale skin, the restrained breathing, the signs of pain that could no longer be hidden. You saved our sister's future, Rithar said quietly, though the plaza could still hear him. You exposed our failure. Evan looked up at him. I just didn't want her hurt, Rithar nodded. That is enough. Then slowly, deliberately, Rithar lowered himself to one knee. The sound was not loud, but it echoed. A sharp intake of breath swept the plaza. Guards stiffened. Judges rose halfway from their seats in shock. Kale and Voss exchanged one glance. Then they stepped forward and knelt as well. 3 warriors, 3 commanders, 3 brothers kneeling before a human. We acknowledge a life debt, Rithar said. Not as a transaction, as a truth. Evan's eyes widened. You don't have to. Yes, Kale said firmly, we do. Voss inclined his head. Not because you demanded it, because you earned it. The plaza erupted into sound, not cheers, not anger, confusion, disbelief, and something else beginning to form, respect. Rithar stood and turned to the crowd. Let this be recorded, he gestured toward the post. This place will no longer be used for punishment. The judges froze. It will stand as reminder, Rithar continued. That law without choice becomes cruelty. Evan closed his eyes briefly, emotion pressing tight against his chest. The healer leaned close. Your heart rate is spiking. Evan whispered, worth it. As the assembly ended, the brothers did not leave immediately. Rithar turned back to Evan one last time. When you heal, you will be offered protection. Evan shook his head. I'll be leaving, Kale frowned. Why? Because staying would turn this into something it isn't, Evan said. This was never about me. Voss studied him. That may be the most human answer you could give. As Evan was escorted away, the crowd parted without being ordered. Some lowered their heads, others watched in silence. High above the city, the footage spread faster than before, not of lashes, but of kneeling, and across the stars, civilizations took notice. Humanity had not conquered Kareth, it had endured it, and in doing so changed it forever. Evan left Kareth quietly. There were no crowds at the landing platform, no ceremonies, no banners. Only a thin line of guards standing at respectful distance and the brothers watching from the edge of the stone terrace. The sky above was heavy with copper clouds, slow and unmoving. Evan walked on his own this time. The healer had argued against it. His back was still wrapped, his movements careful, but he refused the medical platform. He wanted to leave on his feet, not for pride, for closure. Lyra stood beside her brothers. She stepped forward when she saw Evan approach. "I never thanked you properly," she said. Evan stopped a short distance away. "You don't need to." "I do," she said firmly, "because my life is not just mine anymore." Evan nodded. "Use it well." She hesitated, then bowed, not deep, not formal, honest. Evan returned it just as simply. Rithar stepped forward next. "Our offer stands," he said. "Protection, alliance, anything within our reach." Evan met his gaze. "You've already given me what matters." Kale frowned slightly. "We changed our law." Evan smiled faintly. "You chose to, that's the difference." Voss inclined his head. "The galaxy is watching." "Good," Evan said. "Then let them see this part too." He turned toward the human ship. No one stopped him. As the hatch closed behind Evan, the brothers remained where they were. They did not speak until the ship lifted from the platform and vanished into the clouds. "It will not be forgotten," Kale said at last. Rithar shook his head slowly. "It already is." The changes on Kareth did not come all at once. They came in pauses. In moments when an enforcer hesitated before acting. In judges asking questions they had never asked before. In citizens daring to speak quietly about fairness instead of order. The punishment post in the plaza was dismantled piece by piece. The stone beneath it was not replaced. The marks remained. No one tried to erase them. The first official inquiry tribunal in Kareth's history was formed within a cycle, not to punish but to examine. The concept was uncomfortable, necessary, slow. Lyra joined it as an observer. She listened more than she spoke. Beyond Kareth, the effect spread faster. The footage of the kneeling brothers crossed borders where weapons could not. Species that had labeled humans as fragile or erratic began reviewing old assumptions. Humans did not dominate Kareth. They did not threaten. They endured. And that frightened many more than force ever could. On the human ship, Evan lay in the medbay staring at a familiar ceiling. This one was white, human, clean. The ship's doctor stood at his side, arms crossed. "You're lucky." Evan turned his head slightly. "I keep hearing that." "You should not have survived," the doctor said. "Those injuries." "I know," Evan replied. The doctor softened. "Why did you do it?" Evan closed his eyes for a moment. He felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. "Because if I hadn't," he said, "I'd have carried that longer than the scars." The ship jumped to faster than light shortly after. Evan slept through most of the journey. When he woke, messages were waiting, too many to read, diplomatic inquiries, media requests. Military analysts asking questions they pretended were academic. Evan ignored them all. He recorded a single report. It was short, factual, boring by design, no speeches, no lessons, just the truth. Weeks later, the Human Council reviewed it in silence. One member finally spoke. "We didn't send him to do this." Another nodded. "He wasn't supposed to." A third leaned back. "That's what makes it real." Human policy toward Kareth changed quietly after that, not harsher, not softer, more careful. The galaxy adjusted in small ways. Trade negotiations slowed when humans were involved. Not out of fear of power, but fear of comparison. Because humans had introduced a question no one could easily answer. What would you endure for someone weaker than you? On Kareth, the brothers stood again in the plaza months later. The space felt different now, less heavy. Rithar looked at the open stone where the post had once stood. "We were taught strength was silence." Voss nodded. "He showed us strength could speak." Kale exhaled slowly. "And that speaking does not always mean shouting." Lyra watched children pass through the plaza, laughing, careless. No one stopped them. "Will he ever return?" she asked. Rithar considered. "I do not think so." "Do you regret that?" she asked. "No," he said. "Some forces are meant to pass through, not stay." Years later, the story changed again. Not the facts, the meaning. It was no longer told as a story of punishment. It became a lesson taught to new judges, new commanders, new leaders. About a human who chose pain so someone else would not have to. About brothers who knelt not because they were defeated, but because they understood. And about a moment when an empire learned that endurance could be an act of mercy. Evan never became famous the way others expected. He returned to quiet assignments, observational roles, listening posts. Sometimes new envoys would recognize him. They would ask questions. He always answered the same way. "I just stood there." And in standing, he had shown the galaxy something it could not unsee. That humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, not its ships, not its reach across the stars. but its willingness to bear the weight of injustice long enough to break it, not by force, but by choice.